Welcome back to Close Up. The New Hampshire Republican Party will be voting for a new chairman this month. The last election in November featured plenty for the GOP to celebrate, retaining full control of the state house. But at the federal level, the party went winless yet again, losing a Senate race and a congressional race many believed should have been much more competitive, if not outright victories. One of the most important jobs for the next party chair will be to figure out how to end that losing streak when it comes to getting a Republican back to Washington. With us today is RNC Committeeman Chris Ager, who is seeking the chairmanship.
Right.
Thanks for joining us, Chris.
Thank you, Adam.
So what's your theory of the case? Why have Republicans struggled to win in these federal races, and what can you do about it as chair?
Yeah, so part of the issue at the federal side is the funding. At the Senate level, our candidate was outspent over 10-1. It's very, very difficult to beat incumbents with that kind of advantage. And the current federal delegation is 4 Democrats, and so the incumbency helps them quite a bit. Part of what we need to do is move the primary back so that we can have more time to have a head-to-head competition. With that kind of funding advantage, it's very difficult. So we've got to retool how we fund our candidates and make sure we're competitive and have enough time to get the message out.
What about candidate quality? And it seemed like you guys had a lot of good candidates this last time around, but the general electorate wasn't too keen on them, right? You had a core of people within the Republican Party who really loved those very conservative candidates, and they didn't translate in the general election. Does that have to be addressed, and can you do anything about that as chair?
So our voters, the primary voters, pick the candidates. I think we had some very good candidates. The messaging that the Democrats were successful in painting them as extremists with the money that they had and our inability to counter that, I think had a lot to do with the perception. These were good candidates, they're good people, and in the future we need to make sure we get the message out in a way that connects with the New Hampshire voters. And we've got to counter the big money advantage. I mean, there was quite a bit of outside of state money that came in to help the incumbents. So we've got to be able to counter that. And if that's what's allowable by law, we've got to bring in out-of-state money as well.
You mentioned moving the state primary date. I've spoken to General Don Bolduc. He said, I just needed more time. That was his theory of the case of why he lost. Do you think if you had had that primary in May or June, it would have given him an advantage, at least getting a better footing against Senator Hassan?
I think it would have helped. Whether it would have changed the outcome is questionable. There are a lot of things that we're doing an analysis of the election to determine, what exactly were the voters thinking. There's a lot of exit polling and a lot of demographic information that we're looking at. It may have helped, but at the end of the day, I'm not sure if it would have changed the results.
You mentioned the fundraising. On the other side of the fence, the Democrats have a real system. They've had the same chairman in place for almost 16 years now. They've got a fundraising mechanism. They have a lot of staff. Does that put the NHGOP at a competitive disadvantage on election days?
Yeah, I believe it does. And I have a plan to tool up our full-time employees to more than double that. And you need the funding to do it. So I've set a 6-year plan in place looking at where do we want to be in 6 years, 2028 presidential year, and then back up, say what do we need to do to get there, then how much money do you need to raise to do it. I have a finance chairman that I'm going to nominate should I win with a fundraising committee. We're going to focus on out-of-state as well as in-state, digital and direct solicitation. So it's a multi-pronged approach to raising money fundamentally. We can't do what we're currently doing harder and squeeze harder on that rock. You can only get so much the way we're doing it. So we've got to expand our reach and really go out of state.
Several chairs have tried this over several years. What has been the obstacle to making it work on the fundraising side?
So I'm not sure why we haven't been as successful, but I'm going to bring the energy and the 4 years of having been on the executive board. So I've seen what's been happening. I've got a lot of ideas I'd love to put into place and a breadth of friends and networks across the whole country from being the RNC committee man that I can bring to bear.
You've been a core supporter of Donald Trump for a long time. Do you believe he represents the future of the Republican Party?
I'm not sure that he does. He's a very important leader in the party, no question about it. He's got core support. But going into a primary, this is when other candidates or potential candidates can articulate their vision, and then we can see where our primary voters, where the Republican Party wants to go. And my job as chairman would be to be completely neutral and fair to all of them, including President Trump.
And that neutrality is an important granite state tradition. We know for former President Trump, loyalty is a very big thing. Do you think his campaign and he personally will understand that coming back here, even as a former president, he's going to be having to start from square one and win this thing on merit?
Well, I believe he will. And he does have a core base of support, there's no question about it. So he doesn't start from square one, but he does have to reintroduce himself to the Republican Party, especially in New Hampshire, and articulate his vision going forward. And then the primary voters will decide.
You've locked down a lot of support already among the voting delegates in this race for party chairman. But you didn't get the top guy. Governor Chris Sununu is endorsing your opponent, Lou Gargiulo. What's up with the relationship there, and why weren't you able to get that support?
Well, I did not ask for his endorsement, and so from my understanding, he has a personal relationship with Lou that goes back many years, and so that's quite understandable. He did endorse my opponent 3 years ago, and I still was able to win pretty handily. My focus is on the whole Republican Party, bringing everyone together. It's not one person, it's not one part of the party, it's the entire party, and his endorsement is absolutely no problem. Afterwards, should I win, we'll be working together shoulder to shoulder to promote the Republican values that have made New Hampshire such a great state.
You mentioned bringing everyone together, and every party wants to be a big tent, but it's difficult these days because there are a lot of different factions within parties and a lot of different ideas converging under that tent. You've got a lot of state reps who run as Republicans but really vote as libertarians, and I'm curious for your perspective on that. It's very evident at the State House. Are these libertarians welcome in the Republican Party, even though they espouse and vote in a way sometimes that a lot of conservatives might say, hey, I don't like this stuff on the more liberal gun laws, more liberal drug laws, or things that are not necessarily tough on crime. Are libertarians welcome in the Republican Party?
Libertarian-leaning Republicans are absolutely welcome. Absolutely welcome. Everyone from moderate Republicans to what some people would say are staunch conservatives, libertarian-leaning Republicans, all are welcome. We get together, we talk about the issues, we support what's in the platform, and as long as what people support is supportable within the platform, then the party will get behind completely. So everyone is absolutely welcome in our party. We do have a big tent, and we're looking forward to making it even bigger.
All right, RNC Committeeman Chris Ager, candidate for NHGOP chairman. We'll see how the vote shakes out later this month. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Adam.